Across the reception hall, Hana was surrounded by young medical students from various species, all eager to hear her story. She had become something of a legend in medical circles, the human who had proven that sometimes the best medicine was the simplest medicine. The most important thing to remember, Hana was telling the students, is that our so-called flaws are often our greatest strengths. When alien doctors look at human biology, they see chaos and inefficiency. But that chaos is what lets us adapt to situations that would kill more perfect organisms. One of the students, a young hegemony physician with bright blue crystalline features, raised her hand. But how do we know when to use simple treatments versus advanced ones? That's the art of medicine, Hana replied. Technology can tell you what's happening inside a patient's body, but it can't tell you what that patient needs to heal. Sometimes healing requires cutting-edge quantum reconstruction. Sometimes it requires antibiotics and bed rest. The skill is knowing which approach will actually help. Dr. Min Jae-ho, who had traveled from the Human Medical Academy on Mars for the ceremony, was presenting the program's curriculum to a group of alien educators. "We're not trying to replace advanced medical technology," he explained. "We're trying to integrate it with approaches that have been tested by millions of years of evolution. Human medicine teaches us to ask different questions," added Dr. Kim Soo-jin, the program's co-director. "Instead of, how can we optimize this system, we ask, what is this system trying to accomplish? Instead of, how can we control this biological process, we ask, how can we support what the body is already doing?" The changes weren't limited to medical practice. Engineering schools were beginning to study human adaptive design principles. Military strategists were analyzing human survival tactics. Even agricultural programs were examining how human farming methods had succeeded in unpredictable environments where more sophisticated approaches had failed. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the alien doctors themselves. Dr. Vexithara had been joined by hundreds of colleagues who were learning to see biological diversity as strength rather than imperfection. "I spent my entire career trying to make patients conform to my idea of optimal health," Dr. Kethnara confessed during one of Ari's teaching sessions. "Now I'm learning to understand what each patient's body is trying to tell me." Back in her clinic, now expanded to include a full teaching facility, Ari maintained the same simple approach that had saved Hana's life. The wooden sign by her door had been translated into dozens of languages, but its message remained the same. The best medicine works with what you are, not what someone thinks you should be. Young doctors from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to study under her, learning that the most sophisticated diagnostic equipment in the universe was often less valuable than a doctor who knew how to listen to patients, to their bodies, and to the wisdom that came from millions of years of evolution. Commander Hana Kim, now fully recovered and back to exploring the far reaches of space, carried the lesson with her to every new world she visited. Whenever she encountered humans working in alien medical facilities, she made sure to share her story. "Remember," she would tell them, "don't let anyone convince you that human biology is broken just because it's different. Our chaotic, immune systems, our inefficient healing processes, our unpredictable responses to treatment, these aren't flaws to be corrected. They're features that have kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years." The veterinary clinic on the ES space station had become more than a medical facility. It was a symbol of a new understanding that was spreading throughout the galaxy. The recognition that diversity, adaptability, and even a little chaos were often more valuable than perfection. And somewhere in the far reaches of space, other species were beginning to learn the human approach, medicine that worked with biology instead of against it, healing that supported natural processes instead of replacing them, and the revolutionary idea that sometimes the best solution was the simplest one. The galaxy was becoming a healthier place, one patient at a time, all because a veterinarian had remembered that the best medicine came from understanding life as it actually was, not as someone thought it should be. John had indeed enrolled in the station's new human medical training program. After watching Ari save Hana's life with simple treatments, he'd realized he wanted to learn how to help people the same way. It turns out I have good instincts for emergency medicine, June said proudly. Who would have thought that years of fixing broken machinery would translate to understanding how to help broken bodies? Both require the same basic skill, Ari pointed out. You have to understand how something is supposed to work before you can figure out how to fix it when it stops working. June pulled out a small tablet and showed them his latest assignment. I'm studying the new hegemony medical protocols. They've completely rewritten their emergency procedures. Rule number 1 now is, before attempting optimization treatments, consult with species-appropriate medical specialists. That's a fancy way of saying, ask the humans first, Hannah laughed. It's more than that, Ari said, reviewing June's study. Materials. They're finally recognizing that every species evolved differently for good reasons. What works for one might be deadly for another. The changes went far beyond just consulting humans for difficult cases. The entire galactic medical establishment was rethinking its fundamental assumptions about how healing worked. I was talking to Dr. Vexithera last week, June continued. He told me they've started training programs where alien doctors work alongside human physicians to learn our diagnostic methods. They're calling it intuitive medicine versus algorithmic medicine. So we're not primitive anymore? June asked, echoing a question that had bothered him for months. We're practical, Hannah replied firmly. And apparently, practical beats sophisticated when lives are on the line. Ari finished her examination and updated Hannah's medical records. You know what's really ironic? Their quantum scanners can tell you everything about a patient's molecular structure, but they can't tell you whether that patient will survive. Meanwhile, I can listen to someone's heartbeat with a 100-year-old stethoscope and know exactly what their body needs. There's something to be said for tools that have been tested by time, June observed. My maintenance equipment works the same way. Sometimes a simple wrench fixes things that fancy electronic tools can't touch. As they talked, an announcement came over the station's communication system. Dr. Song to emergency medical, Dr. Song to emergency medical. We have an incoming patient that the primary medical team requests human consultation for. Ari smiled and grabbed her medical bag, the same simple collection of basic tools that had saved Hannah's life. Duty calls. Another untreatable patient. Probably. Need any help? June offered, his medical training kicking in. Come along, Ari said. You might learn something useful. As they prepared to leave, Hannah reflected on how much had changed. For 6 months ago the aliens thought we were too primitive to deserve proper medical care. Now they're asking us to teach them how medicine really works. The galaxy is finally learning, Ari said as they headed toward the door, that sometimes the most sophisticated solution is knowing when not to use sophistication at all. Outside the clinic, the sounds of a truly integrated medical facility could be heard. Humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, and saving lives with a combination of advanced technology and ancient wisdom. The future of galactic. Medicine had arrived, and it looked surprisingly human. 1 year after Commander Hannah Kim nearly died from alien medical treatments, the galaxy looked completely different. The small veterinary clinic where she had been saved was now the most famous medical facility in human space, and its influence had spread far beyond anything Dr. Ari Song could have imagined. The official opening ceremony of the human hegemony medical exchange program was held on the same space station where everything had started. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness what many were calling the most important advancement in galactic medicine in centuries. Dr. Vexithara stood at the podium, his crystalline form cycling through colors that indicated deep humility, a far cry from the arrogant physician who had once dismissed human biology as primitive chaos. He was now the director of adaptive medicine for the entire Hegemony Medical Council, a position that hadn't existed before Hannah's case. Today marks not just an exchange of knowledge, Dr. Vexithera announced to the gathered crowd, but an admission that we have been approaching medicine from a fundamentally flawed perspective for thousands of years. In the audience, Ari sat next to June, who had completed his medical training and was now the station's first certified human-alien emergency medical specialist. They watched as their former patient, Commander Hana Kim, was introduced as the program's first official human medical ambassador. "It's surreal," June whispered to Ari. "A year ago they threw her away like garbage. Now they're asking her to teach medical schools across the galaxy." After the ceremony, Dr. Vexathara approached Ari in the reception area. Over the past year, he had become one of her most dedicated students, spending months learning human diagnostic techniques and treatment philosophies. "Dr. Song," he said, his translator rendering his words with a warmth that would have been impossible in their first meeting. "I wanted to thank you again. Your medicine saved much more than Commander Kim's life." "How so?" Ari asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "It saved my pride, my career, and my understanding of what it means to be a healer," Dr. Vexathara admitted. "For centuries, my people believed that medical advancement meant achieving perfection, eliminating all variables, controlling every biological process, optimizing every system." He paused, his colors shifting to what Ari had learned indicated deep contemplation. "You showed us that true advancement means understanding survival, not just surviving in perfect conditions, but thriving when everything goes wrong." At first, many alien physicians dismissed the story as impossible. How could simple antibiotics and basic fluids accomplish what quantum medical reconstruction had failed to achieve? But when Dr. Vexathara himself began sharing detailed reports of what he had witnessed, even the most skeptical doctors started paying attention. The Hegemony Medical Council called an emergency conference to discuss the implications. Representatives from 17 different species gathered in their crystalline meeting halls, their advanced minds struggling to understand how they had been so fundamentally wrong about human biology. "We have been approaching medicine from the wrong perspective," Dr. Vexathara admitted to the assembled council. His report included detailed scans and recordings from Hana's recovery. "We assumed that biological efficiency meant optimization and control. The humans have shown us that true efficiency sometimes means redundancy and adaptability." Dr. Keth Nara, who had been part of the original treatment team, presented additional data. "We have analyzed thousands of cases across the galaxy where our standard treatments failed on various species. In retrospect, many of these failures occurred because we tried to impose our understanding of optimal biology rather than working with each species' natural systems." The implications were staggering. Medical schools throughout hegemony space began revising their curricula. The concept of anti-fragile biology, biological systems that became stronger under stress rather than weaker, became a new field of study. Meanwhile, word was spreading through human colonies and space stations. Dr. Ari's clinic, which had been a quiet little animal hospital, suddenly found itself at the center of galactic attention. Reporters from across human space wanted to interview the veterinarian who had succeeded, where the galaxy's best doctors had failed. Ari handled the attention with characteristic humility. She installed a simple wooden sign outside her clinic that read, "The best medicine works with what you are, not what someone thinks you should be." The saying became famous throughout human space, appearing on medical school walls, hospital entrances, and even printed on coffee mugs sold in spaceport gift shops. But the real change came when alien species started requesting human medical consultants for their most difficult cases. Dr. Yoon Seo-jun, a human physician working on a trade station near Centauri, received his first call just 2 weeks after Hana's recovery. "We have a patient from the Zephyrian Republic," the alien doctor explained through the communication link. "Their biology is completely different from ours. Our treatments aren't working, and we're afraid we might be making things worse." Dr. Yoon arrived to find a creature that looked like a cross between a plant and an animal, with biological systems unlike anything in standard medical databases. Instead of trying to force the patient to fit existing treatment protocols, he spent hours simply observing and learning how their unique biology functioned. "Tell me about their natural environment," he asked the alien medical team. "What kind of stresses do they normally face? How does their body typically respond to threats or injuries?" By working with the patient's natural biological responses rather than against them, Dr. Yoon was able to devise a treatment plan that helped the creature recover. Word of his success spread quickly, and soon human doctors were being called to medical emergencies across the galaxy. Commander Hannah Kim, now fully recovered and back to her exploration duties, became an unofficial ambassador for human medical philosophy. When she visited alien worlds, she often spoke to their medical communities about the importance of understanding rather than correcting biological differences. Every species evolved to survive in their own unique environment, she would tell fascinated alien audiences. What looks like chaos or inefficiency to you might actually be a perfectly adapted survival strategy. Before you try to fix something, make sure you understand what job it's actually doing. The Hegemony Medical Council established an unprecedented program, the first interspecies medical exchange in galactic history. Alien doctors came to human medical schools to learn about adaptive treatment approaches, while human physicians studied advanced alien diagnostic techniques. Dr. Min Jae-ho, Dean of the Human Medical Academy on Mars, found himself hosting visitors from across the galaxy. "It's ironic," he told a group of crystalline hegemony students. "You have technology that can scan a patient down to the molecular level, but you forgot to ask the most important question. What is this biology trying to accomplish?" The changes weren't just academic. Emergency medical protocols throughout the galaxy began incorporating human-developed approaches. Instead of immediately trying to optimize a patient's biological functions, doctors were trained to first understand and support those functions. Space hospitals started hiring human medical consultants as standard practice. Insurance companies began covering adaptive treatment protocols alongside traditional quantum medicine. Medical supply companies found themselves stocking simple human medicines alongside their advanced alien pharmaceuticals. Dr. Ari's small clinic became a pilgrimage site for medical students from across the galaxy. Young doctors would travel thousands of light years just to observe her simple treatment methods and learn her philosophy of working with biology rather than against it. "Medicine isn't about imposing perfection," she would tell these eager students as they crowded into her small examination room. "It's about understanding what each individual patient needs to heal themselves. Sometimes the most sophisticated approach is knowing when to keep things simple." The galaxy's approach to medicine was changing, one patient at a time, all because a maintenance worker had refused to let a dying woman be thrown away like garbage. And a veterinarian had remembered that the best medicine often came from the simplest understanding of life itself. 6 months after her near-death experience, Commander Hannah Kim walked through the familiar corridors of the space station with a spring in her step that hadn't been there before. She was scheduled for a routine follow-up examination at Dr. Ari's clinic, but this visit felt more like a reunion with old friends than a medical appointment. The station had changed dramatically since her recovery, where once there had been only hegemony medical facilities with their cold crystalline equipment. Now there were small human medical offices scattered throughout the commercial sectors. Signs in multiple languages advertised adaptive treatment protocols and species-specific medicine. Most surprising of all was the new wing that had been added to the main medical facility. A large sign at the entrance read, "Human Medical Consultation Center," in both human script and the flowing symbols of the hegemony writing system. "Can you believe this?" Hannah said to herself as she passed the center's waiting area. Inside, she could see alien patients sitting nervously while human doctors reviewed their cases. The sight that would have been impossible just months ago was now becoming routine. When she arrived at Ari's clinic, she found it had expanded too. What had once been a single room was now a suite of 3 examination areas, with a small teaching space where medical students from various species gathered to observe Ari's treatment methods. "Look who's back," Ari said with a warm smile as Hannah entered. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I have in years," Hannah replied honestly. "I think getting rid of all those alien improvements actually made me healthier than I was before I got sick." Ari began her examination using the same simple tools she'd used to save Hannah's life. The irony wasn't lost on either of them that these basic instruments were now being studied and copied by medical facilities across the galaxy. "Your vitals look perfect," Ari said, checking Hannah's blood pressure with the same old-fashioned cuff she'd always used. "Strong pulse, clear lungs, normal temperature. Your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's funny, Hannah said as Ari listened to her heartbeat. The hegemony spent centuries perfecting medicine for perfect beings who never get sick, never get injured, and live in completely controlled environments. Meanwhile, we humans spent thousands of years developing medicine for messy, chaotic, unpredictable life. A familiar face appeared in the doorway. June Park stood there, wearing a crisp new uniform marked with medical insignia. His maintenance coveralls had been replaced with the blue shirt and pants of a certified emergency medical technician. "How's our star patient doing?" June asked, grinning broadly. "June." "Look at you," Hannah said, noticing his medical badge. "I heard you were training to become a medic, but seeing you in uniform is something else." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Hannah standing upright, looking very much alive and healthy. The alien doctor's crystalline features shifted through several colors, the equivalent of a human's jaw dropping in shock. His assistants made high-pitched sounds that their translators couldn't interpret, probably expressions of disbelief. "Impossible," Dr. Vexisthara whispered, his voice carrying a tremor that made his translator glitch slightly. The subject exhibited complete systemic failure. Our quantum scans showed irreversible biological breakdown. The human organism was terminal. Hannah crossed her arms and gave the alien doctor a look that could have melted steel. "The human organism is standing right here, and she can hear you talking about her like she's a broken machine. But how?" Dr. Vexisthara approached cautiously, as if Hannah might explode or disappear at any moment. "We attempted every known medical protocol. We used genetic optimization procedures that have saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Nothing worked. Your biology rejected all improvements." "That's because it didn't need improving," Hannah said firmly. "You saw chaos where there was actually a perfectly functional system. You tried to fix something that wasn't broken." The alien doctor's assistants were frantically scanning Hannah with portable devices, their readings causing more confused, chittering sounds. Dr. Vexthara examined their data with growing bewilderment. "Your cellular structure has returned to stable parameters," he said slowly. "The infection markers have dropped to negligible levels. Your neural activity shows normal human patterns." He looked up at Ari with something that might have been respect. "What procedures did you use? What advanced techniques accomplished this recovery?" Ari smiled and gestured to her simple equipment. "Antibiotics, IV fluids, and fever reducers. Basic human medicine that's been around for centuries." The silence that followed was so complete that Hannah could hear the ventilation systems humming in the walls. Dr. Vexithara stared at Ari's primitive medical tools like they were artifacts from an impossible dream. "Basic medicine," he repeated, his translator struggling with the concept. "But that's impossible," Hannah laughed, a sound full of human warmth and satisfaction. "Welcome to humanity, Doctor. We specialize in impossible." Dr. Vexithara's crystalline body cycled through a rainbow of colors, deep purple, bright orange, then a shocked pale blue. In his species, such rapid color changes were the equivalent of a human's mouth falling open in complete disbelief. His two assistants were making high-pitched, chittering sounds that their translators couldn't even process into words. "This is impossible," the alien doctor repeated, his voice carrying an electronic warble that suggested his translation device was struggling with his emotional state. "Our quantum scanners showed complete biological collapse, cellular breakdown at the molecular level. The human organism was experiencing total systemic failure." Hannah stood perfectly still, arms crossed, looking healthier than she had in weeks. Her skin had good color, her breathing was steady, and her eyes were clear and focused. "Your scans showed a human body fighting off your so-called improvements. My biology wasn't failing. It was rejecting modifications it never needed in the first place." "But we were helping you," Dr. Vexthara protested, genuine confusion radiating from his shifting colors. "We attempted to optimize your inefficient systems. Your immune responses were chaotic. Your blood chemistry was unbalanced. Your neural patterns were completely irregular. We tried to fix these obvious defects." "Those weren't defects," Hannah said firmly. "That was my body doing exactly what it was designed to do, survive." Dr. Vexisthara turned to Ari, his multiple eyes focusing on her simple medical equipment with something approaching desperation. You must explain your procedures. What advanced techniques did you employ? What quantum reconstructors? What genetic modification protocols? Our medical database contains treatment methods from over 300 civilized species, and none of them could save this patient. Ari pulled up Hana's treatment chart on her basic tablet, a device so simple it would have been considered obsolete by most galactic standards. But she handled it with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. I didn't use any advanced techniques, Ari said calmly. I gave her antibiotics to help her immune system fight the infection. I provided IV fluids to replace what her body had lost fighting your treatments. And I used simple fever reducers to keep her temperature in a range that wouldn't damage her organs. But that's primitive, Dr. Vexisthara said, his color shifting to a confused gray. It's effective, Ari corrected. You saw chaos where there's actually resilience. Human biology isn't inefficient, it's redundant. We have backup systems for our backup systems. When one thing fails, something else takes over. She showed the alien doctors Hana's recovery data on her simple monitor. Look at these readings. Her white blood cell count was high because her immune system was working overtime to fight both the infection and your modifications. Her irregular heartbeat was her cardiovascular system adapting to stress. Her elevated temperature was her body creating an environment hostile to the infection. But these readings are completely outside normal parameters, one of the assistant doctors protested. Normal for your species, Ari replied patiently, but perfectly normal for a human under stress. You tried to force her biology to match your idea of optimal function, but optimal for you isn't optimal for us. Dr. Vexisthara was studying the data with growing confusion. But how can such chaotic systems be effective? Our biology is precisely calibrated. Every process is optimized for maximum efficiency. When we encounter problems, we can predict exactly what repairs are needed. Hana decided it was time for a practical demonstration. Without warning, she picked up a medical scalpel from Ari's tray and made a quick, shallow cut across her palm. All three aliens immediately began making alarmed sounds and reaching for emergency medical equipment. "Stop," Hana said calmly, holding up her bleeding hand for them to see. "Just watch." The aliens stared in fascination as blood began flowing from the cut. But within seconds, the bleeding started to slow. Tiny clots began forming along the edges of the wound. Hana's skin around the cut became slightly red and warm as her immune system immediately dispatched white blood cells to prevent infection. "This is happening without any medical intervention," Hana explained as the bleeding stopped completely. "My blood contains clotting factors that activate automatically when they're exposed to air. My immune system is already sending repair crews to the damaged site. Within a few days, this cut will be completely healed with no scar." Dr. Vexthara's colors shifted to a mesmerized gold. "Your body performs automatic medical procedures every second of every day," Hana replied. "When I breathe, my lungs automatically transfer oxygen to my blood and remove carbon dioxide. When I eat, my digestive system breaks down food and distributes nutrients throughout my body. When I get injured, my repair systems activate immediately." She wiped the blood from her palm with a clean cloth, showing that the cut had already stopped bleeding. "Your species has perfect biology for perfect conditions. Everything works exactly as designed, as long as nothing unexpected happens. But humans evolved in a world where everything went wrong constantly. Diseases, injuries, environmental changes, food shortages. So your biology adapted to expect problems," Ari added. "Instead of trying to prevent chaos, human bodies learn to thrive in chaos." "That's why your treatments nearly killed me," Hana continued. "You tried to eliminate the very systems that keep me alive. You saw my fever as malfunction instead of a weapon against infection. You thought my irregular heartbeat was broken instead of adaptive." Dr. Vexisthara was silent for a long moment, his colors cycling through what appeared to be deep thought. "So when we attempted to optimize your systems, you were trying to fix something that wasn't broken," Hana finished. "You were disabling the features that make human biology so resilient. The alien doctor looked at his assistants, then back at Hana and Ari. For the first time since entering the clinic, his colors settled into a steady, humble blue. "It appears," he said slowly, "that we have much to learn about the nature of biological efficiency." News of what happened in Dr. Ari Song's small veterinary clinic spread through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, medical professionals on dozens of worlds were talking about the human woman who had been saved by primitive medicine after the most advanced doctors in the galaxy had given up on her. As she prepared the treatments, Ari shook her head in disbelief. The most advanced medical civilization in the galaxy had been defeated by a simple infection because they couldn't understand that human biology wasn't broken. It was just different. "Sometimes," she said as she started an IV line, "the best medicine isn't the most advanced medicine. Sometimes you just need to work with what nature gave you instead of trying to improve it." Ari moved quickly around her small clinic, gathering supplies. That would have looked primitive to any hegemony doctor. While the aliens had spent 3 days using quantum molecular reconstructors and genetic resequencing devices, Ari reached for a simple plastic bag filled with clear liquid and a basic antibiotic injection that had been saving human lives for over 200 years. "This seems too simple," June said, watching as Ari hung the IV bag on a metal stand next to the examination table. "Are you sure this will work?" Ari didn't answer immediately. She was focused on finding a good vein in the unconscious woman's arm. The dehydration had made her veins hard to see, but Ari had steady hands from years of treating frightened animals. She slipped the IV needle into place on her first try. "There we go," she said softly as clear fluid began flowing into the woman's bloodstream. "The first thing we need to do is get some fluids into her. When your body is fighting a serious infection, it uses up water faster than you can imagine. She's probably severely dehydrated." Next, Ari prepared an injection of broad-spectrum antibiotics. The medicine looked unremarkable, just a clear liquid in a simple syringe. But this particular antibiotic had been refined over decades of human medical research. It was designed specifically to work with human immune systems, not against them. Hegemony doctors probably tried to shut down her immune response because they thought it was too chaotic, Ari explained as she gave the injection. But that's exactly the wrong approach. Her immune system isn't broken. It's working overtime to save her life. What we need to do is help it win the fight, not stop it from fighting. She reached for another simple medication, a basic fever reducer that could be found in any human medical kit. Fever is another thing they probably tried to eliminate completely, but fever serves a purpose. It makes it harder for infections to spread. We just need to bring it down enough so it doesn't damage her organs. As Ari worked, she explained her thinking to June. "Look, imagine you have a house fire. The hegemony approach would be to tear down the whole house and build a new one that's fireproof. My approach is to put out the fire and then fix whatever got damaged." Within the first hour, small changes began to appear. The woman's breathing became less labored. Her skin started to lose that grayish tint that had made her look like she was already dead. Her pulse was still fast, but it had a stronger, more regular rhythm. "I can't believe it," June said, staring at the medical monitor that showed her vital signs slowly improving. "How is this working when their fancy technology couldn't help her?" Ari checked the woman's temperature and smiled when she saw it had dropped 2 degrees. Because they were trying to fix what they thought was wrong with her instead of treating what was actually wrong with her. They looked at her fever and saw malfunction. I look at her fever and see her body fighting to survive. She adjusted the IV drip and continued. They saw her irregular heartbeat and tried to regulate it with quantum field manipulation, but her heart is beating fast because it's trying to pump blood to organs that aren't getting enough oxygen. Fix the underlying problem and the heart will slow down naturally. But their medicine is supposed to be more advanced than ours, June said, still confused. "Advanced doesn't always mean better," Ari replied. "Their medicine is designed for their biology. They have perfect, efficient bodies that work like precision machines. When something goes wrong, they can just replace the broken part or rewrite the code." She pointed to the woman on the table, whose color was noticeably better than when June had brought her in. "But humans aren't precision machines. We're survivors. Our bodies are full of backup systems and redundancies. When one thing fails, something else takes over. When we get sick, our whole body rallies to fight the problem. So what the aliens saw as chaos, June began, was actually our greatest strength, Ari finished. They tried to make her more like them, efficient and predictable. But efficiency isn't always the best strategy for survival. Sometimes being messy and chaotic is exactly what keeps you alive. As if to prove her point, the woman's breathing suddenly became deeper and more regular. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, the first sign of consciousness she'd shown since June found her. The antibiotics are starting to work, Ari said with satisfaction. Her body is winning the fight against the infection, and once that's under control, all her other systems will start returning to normal. June shook his head in amazement. So the most advanced medical civilization in the galaxy was defeated by basic medicine that humans have been using for centuries. Not defeated, Ari corrected. They just forgot the most important rule of medicine. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to understand what they are, not what you think they should be. The woman on the table took a deep, steady breath. For the first time in days, she looked like she was going to live. The first thing Commander Hannah Kim noticed when she opened her eyes was the smell. It wasn't the sterile metallic odor of the Hegemony medical facility she remembered. This place smelled like disinfectant, mixed with something warmer and more familiar, like the veterinary clinic her family used to take their dog to when she was a kid back on Earth. She blinked several times, trying to focus her vision. The ceiling above her was plain white metal, instead of the glowing crystalline surfaces she'd grown used to on alien ships. When she turned her head, she saw simple medical equipment that looked almost ancient compared to the quantum scanners and molecular reconstruction devices she'd been surrounded by for days. "Where am I?" she asked, surprised by how strong her voice sounded. The last thing she remembered was feeling like she was drowning from the inside, her body rejecting every treatment the alien doctors tried. A young Korean woman in a simple white coat turned from a nearby counter, smiling with relief. "You're safe now. I'm Dr. Ari Song. You're in my veterinary clinic on the commercial deck." Veterinary clinic? Hannah tried to sit up and was amazed when her body actually responded. For days, she'd felt like she was trapped in a fog of pain and confusion. Now her mind felt clear, and her muscles seemed to work normally again. "The Hegemony doctors said they couldn't treat you," explained a maintenance worker standing nearby. "I'm June Park. I found you on the outer dock where they'd left you." The memories came flooding back like pieces of a broken puzzle reassembling themselves. Hannah remembered the diplomatic mission that had gone wrong, waking up in the alien medical facility, and the growing horror as she realized what they were doing to her. "They tried to fix me, didn't they?" she said, anger creeping into her voice. "I could feel them changing things inside my body, trying to make me into something I wasn't." "They said your biology was too chaotic for their advanced medicine," June confirmed. "Called you primitive. When their treatments didn't work, they gave up and left you to die." Hannah swung her legs over the side of the examination table, testing her strength. Her body felt surprisingly normal, tired but functional. "Let me guess what they tried first. They wanted to make my immune system more efficient, right? Probably tried to streamline my blood chemistry and regulate my brain waves to match." "Their idea of optimal function?" Ari nodded, impressed. "Exactly. How did you know?" "Because I've dealt with the Hegemony before," Hannah said bitterly. "They think human biology is a mistake that needs correcting. They can't understand that our chaotic systems actually work better than their perfect ones in most situations." She stood up carefully, pleased when she didn't feel dizzy or weak. 12 years as a deep space explorer teaches you a lot about survival. I've been in situations where Hegemony crew members died because their optimized biology couldn't adapt to unexpected conditions. Meanwhile, us messy humans just kept going. "So you're really okay?" June asked, still amazed by her recovery. "Better than okay," Hannah replied, stretching her arms and feeling her joints pop satisfyingly. "I feel more like myself than I have in days. What did you do that their quantum medicine couldn't?" Before Ari could answer, the clinic door chimed with an electronic sound. All three humans turned to see Dr. Vexis Thara entering with 2 medical assistants behind him. The tall, crystalline alien moved with the confident stride of someone expecting to handle routine paperwork. "We have come to collect the human remains for diplomatic purposes," Dr. Vexthara announced in his clicking, translated voice. "The disposal protocols require proper documentation of failed treatment attempts." "What did they do to you?" he whispered, gently touching her forehead. Her skin felt clammy and wrong, like she had a fever and chills all at once. June looked back at the sealed medical bay doors, anger building in his chest. The hegemony claimed to have the most advanced medicine in the galaxy. They could cure diseases that had killed millions on other worlds. They could regrow organs and repair genetic damage that seemed impossible to fix. Their medical technology was supposed to be miraculous, so why had they just thrown this woman away like trash? He knew the answer, and it made him even angrier. The aliens thought humans were primitive. They saw human biology as chaotic and inefficient compared to their own perfect systems. When their advanced medicine didn't work the way they expected, they simply gave up. But June wasn't ready to give up. This woman was someone's daughter, maybe someone's wife or mother. She had a name, a life, people who cared about her. She deserved better than being left to die alone on a cold dock. Then he remembered Dr. Ari Song. Ari ran a small veterinary clinic in the commercial sector of the station. Most people knew her as the woman who took care of the pets and animals that travelers brought with them on long space journeys. Cargo haulers often had cats or dogs to keep them company during months of lonely travel. Rich merchants sometimes brought exotic animals from distant worlds as status symbols. June had taken his own cat to Ari's clinic when it got sick last year. She was kind, patient, and most importantly, she understood that sometimes the simplest treatments worked better than complicated ones. She'd cured his cat with basic medicine and lots of care, not fancy alien technology. If the galaxy's most advanced medical minds had failed to save this woman, maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe what she needed wasn't more advanced treatment, but simpler, more human treatment. June carefully lifted the unconscious woman in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel how fragile she seemed. Her head rolled against his shoulder as he stood up, and he could hear her struggling to breathe. "Hang in there," he whispered to her as he started walking toward the commercial sector. "We're going to try something those fancy doctors probably never thought of." The walk to Ari's clinic felt like it took forever. Every step seemed to jar the dying woman in his arms, and June worried that he was making things worse. But he kept walking, hoping that sometimes the best medicine came from understanding what it meant to be human, not from trying to fix what wasn't actually broken. As he approached the clinic, June wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. Was he crazy to think that a veterinarian could save someone that the best alien doctors had given up on? But looking down at the woman's pale face, he knew he had to try. Dr. Ari Song was cleaning her examination table when June burst through the door of her small clinic, carrying an unconscious woman in his arms. Ari had seen plenty of emergencies. Over the years, pets hit by cargo loaders, exotic animals with mysterious illnesses, even a few spacers who'd been attacked by their own supposedly tame creatures. But she'd never had someone bring her a dying human before. "Put her here, quickly," Ari said, clearing space on her examination table. The woman's body was limp and unresponsive as June gently laid her down. Ari could immediately see this was serious. The woman's lips had a bluish tint, and her breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. "What happened to her?" Ari asked, already reaching for her medical bag. June's words came out in a rush as he explained everything he'd witnessed. The hegemony doctors had her for 3 days. They tried everything, all their advanced treatments, their quantum scanners, even some kind of genetic modification procedure. Nothing worked. They said her biology was too chaotic and primitive for their medicine to fix. Ari raised an eyebrow at this. She'd heard the aliens make similar comments about human biology before. They thought human bodies were messy and inefficient, compared to their own perfectly engineered systems. So they just gave up on her. Dumped her on the outer dock like garbage, June said bitterly. Said she was untreatable. Ari shook her head as she pulled out her stethoscope, a simple device that had been used by doctors for hundreds of years. To the hegemony physicians, Her equipment probably looked like Stone Age tools. They used quantum resonance scanners that could analyze a patient's entire biological structure in seconds. Ari had a stethoscope, a blood pressure cuff, and a basic medical scanner that was older than she was, but sometimes the old ways worked better than the new ones. She placed the stethoscope on the woman's chest and listened carefully. Her heartbeat was rapid and irregular, racing like she was running a marathon while lying unconscious. Ari moved the stethoscope to different positions, checking the woman's lungs. What she heard made her frown with concern. "Her lungs sound terrible," Ari murmured. "There's fluid where there shouldn't be, and her breathing is way too fast." Next, she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around the woman's arm. The reading that came back made Ari's eyes widen. The woman's blood pressure was dangerously low, so low that her organs probably weren't getting enough blood to function properly. "This is bad," Ari said, reaching for her medical scanner. It was a simple device compared to alien technology, but it could still check basic things like body temperature, blood oxygen levels, and signs of infection. The scanner beeped as it analyzed the woman's condition. The results appeared on a small screen, and Ari felt a mix of relief and anger as she read them. "I can't believe this," she said, staring at the readings. "What is it?" June asked nervously. "Is she going to die?" "She doesn't have some exotic alien disease," Ari said, her voice filled with frustration. "This woman is in septic shock. She has a severe infection that's spreading through her whole body. Her immune system is working overtime trying to fight it off, which is why her heart is racing and her blood pressure is crashing." June looked confused. "But the hegemony doctors said—" "The hegemony doctors are idiots," Ari interrupted. She pointed to her scanner's display. "Look at these numbers. Her white blood cell count is through the roof. That's her body trying to fight an infection. Her temperature is spiking because that's how human immune systems work. They saw all of this as chaotic biology, when really it's just a human body doing exactly what it's supposed to do when it's fighting for its life." Ari began examining the woman more closely, looking for signs of where the infection might have started. She found strange marks on the woman's skin, small puncture wounds that looked like they came from medical instruments. "June, look at this," she said, pointing to the marks. "These look like injection sites. And here, see these burned areas? This looks like damage from some kind of energy treatment." The more Ari examined the woman, the angrier she became. She found evidence of multiple medical procedures that made no sense for treating an infection. There were signs that the aliens had tried to modify the woman's brain chemistry, alter her blood composition, and even change her genetic structure. They weren't trying to cure her infection, Ari realized. They were trying to fix what they thought was wrong with her human biology. They probably made the infection worse by suppressing her immune system and disrupting her body's natural healing processes. "So you can help her?" June asked hopefully. Ari was already reaching for supplies. "This isn't some mysterious alien condition. It's a basic medical emergency that human doctors have been treating for centuries. She needs antibiotics to fight the infection, fluids to stabilize her blood pressure, and medicine to bring down her fever." Dr. Vexithara's 6 crystalline eyes focused on the still form lying before him. The human woman named Commander Hannah Kim hadn't moved for hours. Her chest rose and fell in an irregular pattern that made no sense to the advanced medical equipment surrounding her. The examination room buzzed with activity as alien doctors moved around the table like strange glowing insects. Their sophisticated scanners beeped and chirped, displaying readings that seemed to contradict everything they knew about biology. Hannah's heart rate jumped from slow to fast without warning. Her blood pressure readings looked like a broken roller coaster. Even her brain waves refused to follow any logical pattern. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Kethnara, Vexithara's assistant. She held a device that could analyze the genetic structure of any known species in the galaxy. "Her DNA keeps changing its expression patterns. How does this organism even stay alive?" For 3 full rotations of their space station, the hegemony's best medical minds had worked tirelessly on this puzzle. They tried treatments that had cured diseases across 17 different worlds. They used healing rays that could mend broken bones in minutes. They even attempted to reprogram her cells using quantum reconstruction techniques that were considered miracles of modern science. Nothing worked. In fact, everything they tried seemed to make her worse. Dr. Vexithara clicked his mandibles together in the alien equivalent of grinding teeth. His species had mastered medicine thousands of years ago. They could regrow entire limbs, cure genetic disorders, and even reverse aging. Their medical technology was so advanced that death from disease was nearly extinct in their civilization. But this human female was dying right in front of them, and they couldn't figure out why. "Look at these cellular readings," Dr. Kethnara said, pointing at her scanner. "Her immune system is attacking our healing treatments. It's treating our medicine like poison." "Barbaric," Vexithara replied, his voice carrying a tone of disgust mixed with confusion. "Their biology makes no sense. Look at this blood composition. It's full of impurities and inefficiencies. How did such a chaotic species ever develop? Space travel?" The other doctors murmured their agreement. Everything about human biology seemed wrong to them. Human hearts had only 4 chambers instead of the efficient 7-chamber design most intelligent species possessed. Their blood carried oxygen in the most roundabout way possible. Their brains used electricity instead of the clean quantum processes that civilized beings relied on. "Perhaps," suggested Dr. Morthek from across the room, "we should try the genetic optimization protocol. We could fix her DNA structure and make her more compatible with proper medical treatment." Vexithara considered this option. The optimization protocol was typically used on primitive species they encountered during exploration missions. It would restructure her genetic code to match more efficient biological designs. Her immune system would be streamlined, her blood chemistry improved, and her neural pathways rewired for better functionality. "Initiate the protocol," he decided. "We'll fix what evolution failed to accomplish." For the next several hours, they bombarded Hana's unconscious form with genetic modification rays. They watched as their equipment attempted to rewrite millions of years of human evolution. The machines hummed and glowed as they tried to force her biology into a more logical pattern. But instead of improving, Hana's condition grew worse. Her vital signs became even more erratic. Her body temperature spiked dangerously high. Strange. Rashes appeared on her skin where the modification rays had touched her. "She's rejecting the optimization," Dr. Kethnara reported, alarm creeping into her voice. "Her body is fighting against the improvements we're making." Dr. Vexithara stared at the readings in disbelief. No species had ever rejected genetic optimization before. It was supposed to make any organism better, stronger, more efficient. How could any biological system refuse improvement? "Shut down the protocol," he ordered reluctantly. "This organism is beyond our capabilities." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitoring equipment. The greatest medical minds in the hegemony had been defeated by one unconscious human. It was embarrassing and frustrating in ways they had never experienced before. "What do we do with her now?" asked Dr. Morthek. Vexithara looked at Hana's pale, still form one last time. According to their regulations, they had done everything medically possible. They had followed every protocol in their extensive databases. If a patient couldn't be saved using their methods, there was only one option left. "Transport her to the outer dock," he said with finality. "Let her species collect her remains when they arrive. We cannot waste any more resources on this primitive organism." June Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked on the damaged sensor array outside the space station. The repair job was routine, just another day fixing the endless problems that kept their home in space running smoothly. He'd been doing maintenance work for 3 years now, and nothing much surprised him anymore. That changed when he heard the heavy doors of the medical bay sliding open behind him. He turned around to see 2 tall, crystalline figures carrying what looked like a stretcher. The hegemony doctors moved with their usual cold efficiency, their translucent bodies catching the light from nearby stars. They weren't walking toward the medical transport area where patients usually went. Instead, they were heading straight for the outer dock, the place where they dumped garbage and things they didn't want anymore. June's stomach dropped when he realized what was on that stretcher. It was a human woman, and she wasn't moving. The alien doctors set the stretcher down on the cold metal floor of the outer dock like they were disposing of broken equipment. They didn't check her pulse. They didn't adjust her position. They just left her there and walked away. their crystalline forms shimmering as the medical bay doors sealed shut behind them. June dropped his tools and rushed over to where the woman lay. Up close, he could see she was in terrible shape. Her skin was pale and had a greyish tint that made her look like she was already dead. When he put his ear close to her mouth, he could barely hear her breathing. It was so shallow and weak that each breath seemed like it might be her last. Her clothes were soaked with sweat, and her body felt both hot and cold at the same time. June had seen enough sick people in his life to know that this woman was dying, and dying fast.